Welcome, everybody, to the VALR Podcast. It is a great pleasure to welcome Lily Liu here, who is the president of the Solana Foundation. Lily, Lily and I have gone back many, many years. Pre-crypto, I was actually thinking about this, that Lily, we knew each other before Bitcoin was a thing, before Bitcoin was even invented. So that was like in the late single-digit 2000s. So very welcome, Lily.
2007. Yeah, 2007 in South Africa. So
Lily and I were colleagues in a previous life, and our paths have kind of come. And actually, we were sitting across the dinner table a couple of weeks back. Lily hosted a wonderful event in Paris, a little dinner for some of the movers and shakers in the crypto industry. So this is a special podcast for me to be interviewing a friend. So very welcome, Lily. So it's really good to have you. And I really want to use this time together, Lily, just to chat about a few things. First of all, for our listeners to get to know you a little bit better. So like pre-Solana, pre-crypto, just kind of what's your history and how did you get into crypto? And then we'll start talking about your role as the president of the Solana Foundation, what the Solana Foundation is, and a few things about Solana altogether, really with the intent of our listeners learning from you about not just Solana, but just your views on the world. I think you're one of the very intelligent people that I know that has views on a whole bunch of range of topics. So really anything's fair game, but we just want to get to know you, your thoughts, and the Solana ecosystem. So tell us a little bit about your history and how you got into crypto and pre-crypto and getting into crypto.
Yeah. Well, I think one interesting thing I've noticed about people who get into crypto, no matter which kind of class of whichever year, is there's something that about crypto that kind of activates a nerve in your body based on sort of your worldview, previous conviction, and oftentimes at the very beginning, it's actually hard to articulate sort of why you're attracted to this thing, right? And for me, it took me actually a number of years to start to articulate why I was so drawn to Bitcoin when I first heard about it. And as I thought about it, I think really for me, where it started was as a kid, I accidentally started to learn about modern Chinese history. My family is Chinese. I was born in California, born and raised in California. And I started to learn about what happened during the 50s and the 60s and in the 70s in China. And it's a crazy history, right? Absolutely devastating things that if you're 9 years old reading these books that are nonfiction, you think it must be fiction because how could people behave like that at scale? And then I traveled to China later and totally loved it, right? What an amazing country, incredible culture. Yes, I'm biased, right? Incredible food. And what really struck me about it was how this country and this culture could do a total about face within the span of really a couple of years. And in other societies, I feel like that go through these throes of incredible strife. When they get to a new stage, it's a new set of people. But in China, it's actually largely the same set of people that were the Red Guards during the Cultural Revolution, and then were later the harbingers of capitalism and one of the most sort of energetic capitalist rejuvenations that as humankind we've ever seen. So what was so interesting to me about it was, that's interesting on 10 different levels. But how does the same person go from this to that within like a 5-year period, right? And that was an enduring question for me. And so then, many years later, I studied econ, I studied IR. I was supposed to be a doctor. No one's surprised by that, right? And went pretty far down that path. And then I had to plot my escape from a future of medicine. So, one of my many ways to plot a legitimate escape was I applied to an investment banking internship in Hong Kong, got the offer, and the guy calls me. He says, Lily, we have questions about your interest in finance, but we'll hire you anyways for the summer. So that basically became my exit. Then got a full-time job at McKinsey in New York and in Beijing. That's where we met each other. I did go to South Africa for quite a period of time as well, because it's a better place to spend North American winter, which is in
Absolutely.
African summer. It was really my motivation as a 23-year-old, if I'm going to be honest. And it was amazing. And then I ended up working at KKR, a private equity firm in New York, did some projects in Europe and Asia, moved back to China, is building hospitals. And kind of the common thread throughout a lot of that was to certainly an interest in China and modern China's evolution, big story, right? But then beyond that, also to understand how different countries, different economies, different cultures, how they behave and evolve as well, which is why I was so curious to work in South Africa and Indonesia and throughout Southeast Asia, through Europe, India, so on and so forth. And McKinsey was amazing for that, right? And gained so many sort of frames of reference as to how economies work, right? It's become very relevant and kind of sparked my interest in crypto as well. So fast forward to 2013, I heard about Bitcoin accidentally through Bobby Lee, a friend of mine in Shanghai, who was one of the founders of one of the early Chinese Bitcoin
Yeah.
exchanges. And that was my first.
I haven't heard his name for a long time, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bobby has been instrumental in onboarding a number of people into crypto. We were friends in Shanghai, and that was my first encounter with the religious crypto set, because we've all met these people before. They just won't stop talking about it, right?
That's right.
And there's just nothing which is more important. It is. You can only say it is religious in nature. So finally, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so bored, man. Fine, I'll read the white paper. And one should always seek out source material. So rather than read what the journalist wrote about Bitcoin, just go read the white paper. And I thought, okay, this is not a scam. I don't fully understand it. This is definitely not a scam. There's something interesting about it because it proposes that state and money are independent, which is a crazy idea. We all presume that's just the way the world works. That's a big assumption to relax. And I thought, well, that actually resonated with me quite a bit because, when you've been in quite a wide range of different economies, a common phenomenon is that money works really poorly, and financial systems are oftentimes, at some point, political instruments that a few people who control that country, which controls the money, turn certain levers in certain ways for the benefit of special interests. And what happens as a result is millions, tens, hundreds of millions of people live less optimal lives, right? And you see that all over the place. And so for crypto to propose, or Bitcoin to propose, separation of state and money, and then also propose that economies should be governed by its participants rather than the sort of through this proxy election through this proxy vote of representative democracy, which then exerts sort of monetary and fiscal policy. What if it's just inherently done in a way? And so you take the proxy element of representative democracy, you set that aside, you still do that for other things, but then the actual monetary system is governed intrinsically, right? That's a pretty crazy idea. And that's what got me interested in it. I think that people who got into crypto in certain generations, especially into Bitcoin in those days, it was some combination of three things. You were either in it for the tech, the ideology, or the drugs. Could be all three, right? I was in it for the ideology and the political economy side of it. I'm not an engineer, so it wasn't as much about the tech for me at the time, although that's also an endless sort of source of interest and inspiration. And then, the original use case of Bitcoin was Silk Road. That wasn't really my jam either. So, but, it was for a lot of people, I will say. So,
yeah, awesome. Amazing. Thank you. And then also before Solana, you were a co-founder of Earn.com with Balaji.
mm-hmm.
And that was sold, for the people that don't know, to Coinbase. Any comments about that and your experience there and kind of how your exploration of Bitcoin got you into actually running a startup and in the crypto space? What did that journey look like?
Yeah, it was a pretty fraught journey. It was originally a company called 21, which was a very successful Bitcoin mining company before it wasn't. And then there was a period of time where we spent an hour, a year and a half, actually restructuring that, and then turned it in from Bitcoin mining company, if you can believe it, into a consumer app, based on the premise that became only very tangentially consistent, that crypto is good for micropayments. And so then, if you think about micropayments, what is the other side of a commercial micropayment transaction? We all know crypto, there's a ton of buy sell in crypto where you're basically sending one token for another token exchange. It's trading. But what is potentially more interesting is actually creating economies that are settled in crypto. And so what are the types of things that are digitally native that you can buy with crypto and potentially take advantage of the fact that you can do really fast, really cheap, and very constant microtransactions? Now, a lot of that theory, I think, is much more relevant and doable today than it was at the time, because at the time, we pretty much only had Bitcoin. That was even before the ICO era. Certainly didn't have stable coins. And also because there was so much demand on the Bitcoin network, sometimes a single transaction fee was $50. And imagine trying to do microtransactions when the fee to do so is anything but micro. So the practicalities of that aside, and the infrastructure sort of being a little bit lacking at the time, the overall thesis, which is still one I'm long-term very excited about and have very strong conviction in, is that you got to create economies in, first of all, digitally native assets. But then how do you create economies around existing sources of supply and demand that just have never been able to be monetized before? So to me, technology gets a market because it helps you discover, reveal, organize, and then monetize a long tail of existing supply and demand. And it might not be obvious. It might be a secret source of supply and demand. For example, there's always been a market for on-demand riders and drivers, right? But you couldn't organize that market until you had an iPhone and incredible entrepreneurs who built something like Uber, which is, of course, incredibly difficult. So that's, to me, one example. Another example is, in the early days of the internet, bloggers. There's always been a long tail of content creators, and then people who are interested in reading content which is being produced by regular people, right? Who are, unlimited topic area and experts in their fields. So to me, with crypto, the question is always, what are some of those secret sources, a secret and unorganized long tail supply and demand markets? And I think there's so many. And one of them, actually the biggest one, I think, is in time, right? If you think about it, it's a digitally native asset. It's a constantly refreshing source of minutes. No one has an idea what their minute rate is. And also, going back to the more ideological aspect of this around separating state and money, I think there's one aspect of looking at this where the labor market is actually what binds those things together, because it's kind of the core use case for you live on some piece of land, which is probably aggregated into some nation state with an existing government. And we have fairly sort of stable perceptions of where those borders are today, right? And definitions of where those borders are today. Okay, so you live that land, you are a productive member of society, and you earn your money, you pay your taxes, and that actually creates the base level of demand and utility for the money which is tied to that piece of land, right? And so to me, I sort of think, the labor market might actually be the biggest long tail market here because it's inherently fragmented and it's deliberately so. And at the same time, we've already seen some of this happen with Upwork and the freelancer sites and those types of things. But, the kind of radical idea was, what if you create a liquid market for minutes of people's time? And the other interesting part of that is everyone kind of has an idea what a year's worth of their time is. And a month for sure. A lot of people also have an idea of what an hour of their time is worth. But who knows what a minute of their time is worth? No one has an instinct for that. Also because it's highly variable, right? The variability in what you think a year of your time is worth, it's going to change, but it's going to change very slowly, very predictably. But you actually have like a very sort of volatile market throughout the day of what a minute of your time is worth, which means that even the most important person has minutes of their day, let's call it, 10 a.m. when they need to be productive at work, where a minute of their time is extremely valuable. But then that minute of their time is 6:30 a.m. when they're, going on a walk and drinking coffee. and just kind of relaxing, maybe a minute of that time is $10 for someone who's highly skilled, highly, versus $100 later, whatever it might be. So I thought that was just an interesting way to think about it. I think that is still absolutely a market, let's call it the other side of micropayment, that should be explored. And now that we have performant payment rails, maybe this is a good segue into Solana, actually.
Yeah.
I think that maybe something like that should be retried on Solana. But really, that's one of the reasons why I got into Solana. I spent a good amount of time. I called it being a Bitcoin rationalist, not a maximalist, but a rationalist about Bitcoin. And I was somewhat resistant. I wouldn't say resistant, but just not really focused on things outside of Bitcoin for a number of years. And then I started using Solana in 2021. And as soon as I started using it, I was totally blown away because it just felt like a little bit like using Venmo, or it just felt like the rest of the internet to me. And that was so unique because I was so accustomed to, you send a Bitcoin transaction and you wait an hour, right? Or you send an ETH mainnet transaction and you wait 2 minutes. And you can't build a consumer experience around that.
Absolutely. Okay. So let's take a step back, and then you are right now the president of the Solana Foundation. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what is the Solana Foundation? What is your role as the president? Is that a full-time job? Is that more like a part-time job? Like, what do you do actually as the president of the foundation? First of all, what is the foundation?
Yeah, so in crypto, there's oftentimes the folks that initially build the core protocol. And so in crypto, there's the tech, and then there's the community, right? So the tech obviously has to exist. Otherwise, there's no blockchain. There's nothing, right? But then once the technology exists, like any open source technology, it doesn't matter. It's like, the tree that fell in the forest, no one heard it. If no one's there to hear it, did it happen? So if you have no developers initially, are the most important part of a community. If there's no developers building anything, then your technology is not being used and your block space is not being used. I don't know, like no one's there. Did it happen? Type of thing. So there's the tech side, and then there's the community side. And community, broadly speaking, is, of course, developers are the most important part of community, especially in the earlier days, because if there's no developers, there's no applications, there's literally nothing for users to do beyond, I sent you a token, you send it back to me, it was super fast, super cheap, and way cheaper than interchange, is basically where it starts and ends, right? And that is, I will say, that is better. It's just not enough to warrant broad-scale adoption of self-custody. So the foundation is, therefore, now that Solana is a little bit more mature, the foundation is here to be kind of a steward for the ecosystem's growth, right? Our job is, over time, to make ourselves irrelevant. And so today it is absolutely a full-time job, especially with all the things that are happening within Solana, and there are many. I find it to be really exciting. But then, our job, the way I kind of think about it is, I think that a blockchain ecosystem is more akin to a city than being more sort of corporate. And I think a number of people come into the blockchain world. Now, this is for L1s. Obviously, it's different if you're an exchange, you're a company, right? And when you want to do an exchange, you want all the users and all the trading fees and all the revenue and all the launches, all of that to sit on your nice, tidy balance sheet, right? But as a blockchain, as an L1,
layer one for listeners that may not be familiar.
Yes. Yeah. As a layer one and as a blockchain protocol, we actually want the opposite. For us to win, it's kind of like Linux is used everywhere, right? And so what you actually want is you want to ultimately own none of the human financial capital and have all that sitting within a single entity. What you want is you want that to be productively dispersed and have all of these sort of organic communities grow up over time from people who, of their own volition, find this to be a place to make a living for themselves, right? Be an entrepreneur, build something, build an economy. And it's a little bit like starting a city and attracting people to come move to your city. It's a little bit, honestly, there's actually quite a few examples of this in recent history with what Singapore has achieved, right? With what Shenzhen is today versus what it was. I think I forget when Shenzhen was established, but if you looked in 1950, it was not a global city at all, right? So that is how we think about what the Solana ecosystem and really L1s and foundation, L1s and protocols. That's to me sort of what their purpose and what their goals are. And then the foundation within that is a little bit, if we extend the analogy a little bit, is kind of that startup, a little bit like the mayor's office, to go evangelize the city, get people to move, make sure it's an attractive place to move to, and be a public servant as well.
Is that how you guys see yourselves? Is that mayor's
Yes.
office in the city?
Yeah, I see us at the foundation as being public servant and evangelist for the city.
Awesome. I like that analogy. The city and the mayor's office. We'll call you mayor.
No, not me. Like, but the thing is, so we're all public servants. Is what we are. We're public servants.
Yes. Let's talk. Actually, jokes aside, how does one go about getting the role that you did as the president of the Solana Foundation? How did that even happen?
Like most things in life and in crypto, a little bit by accident and happenstance. And by the time I got involved in the foundation formally about 3 years ago, initially really just as an advisor, I was already a pretty diehard fan of Solana. I was a very diehard user. I won't bore you with all of the fairly degenerate trades that I was doing during that time period when there was a lot of fun stuff going on. And so I was already a pretty big fan of Solana, and I thought, maybe I should contribute. And I've known these guys for a little bit, haven't been in touch in a while. So, okay, I'll be a contributor. In crypto, there's such a sliding scale of different ways that you can contribute to an ecosystem. So I thought, okay, I'll do this. And when I got involved in Solana, one of the things that I made an impression upon me was I saw a lot of momentum in the ecosystem in all the same ways that we see now. But of course, it's 2021. And I thought, Solana has such a strong community, kind of tech. The tech is great, the community is great, but right now at this stage of growth, it is a little bit more concentrated in certain geographies, namely North America and to an extent Europe. So I thought, okay, well, one thing I can probably contribute is to try to expand Solana's footprint around the world. And then the question is, how do you do that? And how do you sort of, because you don't do it yourself, right? What you don't do is you don't say, okay, we're going to set up a little bit like Google goes to Southeast Asia. They set up an office in Singapore, and then the typical way that you grow in a corporate way, that's not how a community grows, because the community is much, much broader than any one of us, much broader than the foundation. Going back to your prior question, our aspiration is for the foundation to shrink in relative size year on year relative to the ecosystem.
Gotcha.
So, but I thought, how do we introduce Solana to the platform, the brand, the community to people around the world? And because it is open source, it's global. Solana should feel Indian in India. It should feel Chinese in Hong Kong, Singapore, and Taiwan. It should feel German in Germany, because this is fundamentally different from if you're Google or Facebook going abroad. You actually want to kind of protect your brand and make sure it's consistent around the world. And for us, we see it a little bit the opposite, actually. Obviously, you want people to you want to have visual consistency and like very basic things like that. But otherwise, as an open platform, it's to be adapted to best serve the needs and the culture of whatever community it's entering into.
Be local.
Right?
It should feel local.
It should be local. It should feel local, right? It should feel local, and that's part of what being open source is, right? Okay. Awesome. Not to pretend you know the answer. I don't know the answer of what Solana should feel like in India and what the use cases are that are really going to resonate there. So, yeah.
So a couple of questions about Solana and also Bitcoin and your thoughts on the two. So, obviously at VALR, we support Solana, we support SPL tokens, we obviously run nodes, etc. And, if I'm talking to our wallets team, it's pretty difficult to run a Solana node and keep it up. It's it takes quite a lot of effort to do that. And of course, when you talk about one of the benefits of Solana, which is it's really fast, it has particular characteristics where transactions are finalized much quicker than other blockchains, particularly Bitcoin, as we were talking about Bitcoin. But it's some of the criticism might be is that it's not as decentralized as people may want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
What's your response to that as far as just kind of getting it performant versus completely decentralized, and any criticisms that you've heard about in that
Sure.
space?
Sure. Well, there's been such a robust discussion in, particularly since 2017, 2018, around architecture for blockchain scalability. And there absolutely are trade-offs involved, and trade-offs not just in terms of the way we typically phrased the technological trilemma, speed, decentralization, security, but then also trade-offs in the ecosystem between is the correct difficulty of usage more appropriate at the user level or at the validator level. I think that's also a form of trade-off, and frankly, also by extension, decentralization that is, I guess, a product implication of whatever architecture that I think is discussed a little bit less. But even just kind of looking at the traditional trade-offs argument that people talk about. So first of all, the assertion that Solana is centralized, I think, is just factually untrue. If you look at any tabulation of the Nakamoto coefficient, right, super minority stake, and the Nakamoto coefficient being the number of nodes that collectively hold 33% of staked Solana on the network. The number for Solana has been in the time that I've been with Solana, between 20 and about 33. And if you look at other leading networks, it's all within that range. Now, it's been higher, it's been lower for various reasons that are dynamic over time. But then that's also in a network where we have, I think right now, probably over 2,500 nodes. And even during the depths of the bear market, it was, I think, around 1,000 nodes, something like that. Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
And so the total node count for Solana, in spite of it being certainly more challenging to maintain, is far higher than other networks, and the Nakamoto coefficient continues to be like kind of within the same kind of cohort that we're probably in. So I think the critique of Solana as being centralized, I think that's a bit of a holdover from 2020. And I think at 2020, I don't know what the stats were at the time, but Solana only launched in March of 2020. So I'm sure that during 2020, they were just different numbers. And I think you see that of really any chain in its first year, right? So that's, I think, that's what I think about the critique of it being highly centralized. But then on the second point, I think that's an aspect of this kind of trade-offs, ecosystem trade-offs discussion that as crypto, we have a little bit less often. I do think it's actually reasonable to say that the burden of maintaining the chain for a validator who is clearly technologically inclined and has made a very obvious choice to be in that role may be a better candidate for having a little bit of a harder job than the user.
Right. Okay, that's a very interesting differentiation. So validators being, you want them, obviously, we do want them to be decentralized, but they're also a little more technologically savvy, and to kind of abstract that from the user, where we want the experience to be much more quick, much more usable, and allow a whole bunch of applications to be able to run on them without having huge delays, which some of the other chains may have.
Huge delays, or even just have an architecture which is not fully optimized for speed.
Sure.
So the thing is, right now Solana is about 400 milliseconds for finality, which is amongst the fastest. And I think it's good that a number of different chains are constantly testing out new architectures, consensus mechanisms, ways to get to a better, sort of more optimal point on this whole trilemma curve, right?
Yeah.
I think that's great. But I think if you're thinking about creating a product which is going to make self-custody amenable, attractive, and feasible for, let's call it, 1 billion people, then you have to continually deliver the most Web 2-like experience at the click level. And also Solana is constantly sort of pushing performance on mainnet. It's a separate question whether whether the pace of innovation, even at sort of the edge of what hardware can do, will long-term be enough for however much demand for block space there could theoretically come over, let's call it a 5 or 10-year period, right? That is an ongoing discussion in crypto as a whole, always. When do you need customized, application-specific, modular, sovereign, what do you want to call it, a sovereign chain or application-specific environment, versus when do you need to be on mainnet? So
Absolutely.
that's an ongoing, robust conversation in all
Understood.
corners of the blockchain world.
Absolutely. So you mentioned that Solana just started in 2020. It's kind of crazy that it's only 4 years, just over 4 years later, and here we are with Solana, one of the largest L1s or ecosystems in the crypto and the blockchain space. Today, the news just came out actually that VanEck just filed for its Solana ETF. So that's kind of crazy that from like 4 years ago, nothing, to kind of Wall Street trying to list it as an ETF. It's a very fast, a college degree. And here we
Yes.
are. So wanted to get your thoughts, if you have any thoughts as a Solana Foundation or your own personal thoughts about VanEck's application and Solana ETFs in general.
I've had a number of people tell me that various issuers are interested in issuing a Solana ETF. I guess that's not surprising. Also, we've all been part of this slow-moving drama about the Bitcoin ETF since basically we can remember, right?
Yeah.
I think I first started hearing about a Bitcoin ETF literally in 2014.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
we won't, a decade ago, we won't recount the history and the complicated or maybe not complicated positions on that one. And eventually we broke the dam on that one as an industry. So, and Wall Street, I guess they see opportunities. And so the Bitcoin ETF did really well. The Ethereum ETF seems to also be in progress. And so I guess people see, okay, well, maybe that one worked, this one might work. Okay. So we as the foundation have nothing to do with that. It's third-party actors who are doing, who I guess really like Solana. I think that's great, right? They see promise in Solana. They're excited about the ecosystem. And I think that's wonderful.
Awesome. And just for the record, we are recording on, this is the 27th of June, 2024. So the news of VanEck's, the VanEck news of the Solana ETF just came out this morning, a few hours ago. Another piece of news that came out of the Solana ecosystem this week was Blinks. So tell us a little bit about what is Blinks and why is it important?
So there's two things that are kind of bundled together. One is Solana Actions, and then there's Solana Blinks. And Blinks, it's kind of a cute name because it communicates sort of what the sort of instantaneous kind of feel of it, and it also stands for blockchain links.
I thought it was very clever. Kudos for whoever put that together.
Right. So the story actually starts with Solana Pay. So Solana Pay is a merchant payment protocol that was built, I think, a couple of years ago, starting in 2021, when I first got involved with Solana as well. And it was really based around, as the name would suggest, around payments. But really, it's capable of more than just payments, because really it's just passing a message, right? A message that which is creating, a transaction, a smart contract execution in a certain way. So couldn't you use that to execute something more than a payment? Yes, you could, right? So you can do like a vote. You can do really anything that be encoded in a Solana transaction. And so that's the action part of it. And that's why it's not a payment, right? Because the whole thing around anything past Bitcoin is this is a blockchain with a smart contract platform that allows you to build applications on top of this decentralized infrastructure, where it may or may not be the sort of application or sort of the asset itself, which is the ultimate application. Okay, so then the Blinks part of it is cool, because then you can basically have any link trigger a Solana transaction. So what you can do is you can put a link, for example, in your Twitter feed, and it will unfurl that Solana transaction, which could be something like, I'm going to send Farzam $5. It could also be, vote for this proposal to, make this change or not to a protocol. and or enter into a prediction market vote of who you think is going to win the November election, right? And put your money where your mouth is. So you've got to potentially stake. There's many creative things you can do around that. You've potentially got to stake some assets in order to validate your position. All sorts of things you can do, right? So that's actions and blinks. And I think why it's significant is because for various reasons, it's been kind of hard for crypto to become useful outside of trading environments and embedded into just the internet at large. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is the gatekeepers of the mobile experience, Apple and Google, for various reasons, don't really love crypto. So it can be challenging to have a mobile native crypto experience. There's other reasons as well, but that means a lot of the ways that we experience the internet, which is primarily mobile, it's hard for crypto to be a part of that native experience. Okay, and then on web, you got to download a wallet extension. Save your seed phrase somewhere. There's better solutions these days with social login, something like what TipLink in our ecosystem is doing, which allows you to use Google login to create a wallet that can be consistent between web and mobile. So there's definitely things that are improving, but it's still a lot of friction and a lot of cost for a user to set up, where there's got to be a very, very, very clear reason to do so. On the other hand, on the other side, for people to actually go do that. So I think that something like blinks and actions, if there's that thing that you want to engage in, then it makes it easy to have a reason to experience crypto and get the wallet, and because there's value in having that experience now.
And how exactly does it work practically? So if you're obviously transacting on a blockchain, you have a private key, you've got some type of wallet where that key is held, that's kind of signing a transaction. So when you got a link, you have to have like a pre-set up wallet on your device that you're clicking that link on, or how does that actually work?
Yeah. So you need a wallet extension, typically in Chrome. So that could be any number of wallets. There's many wallet extensions that are available these days. And so when you click on the link, it'll pop open your wallet extension and ask you to confirm that transaction.
Awesome.
And then it'll execute that transaction.
Very exciting.
Basically opens up a pop-up. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. I'm really excited to see what people are going to build with it. Back to the whole earn.com thing. Actually, way back in 2017, 2018, one of the things we wanted to build was public tasks, where you could essentially have an embedded task that would have a budget of, let's call it, there's $1,000, budget of 1,000, responses at $1 each. And then people could complete that task, use up the budget, and that's the type of thing you could embed in social media. That's what we wanted to do. And fast forward a few years, now that's the type of thing, amongst many, that you could actually do. So maybe it's time to do earn.com.
It's amazing. Bringing lots of different things back together. That's really great. Let's talk a little bit about Solana Summer. So at VALR, we had a musician. One of our developers is a musician. Actually, I'll send it to you. He put a beautiful song together about Solana. So that was last year. Yeah.
Okay.
And so VALR this year is planning on doing a whole bunch of stuff for Solana Summer to get people kind of playing around the ecosystem. Our marketing team is going to be doing a bunch of things for Solana. Obviously, as VALR, we're crypto agnostic. We just try to create as much infrastructure across different chains for people to use. But one of the things and one of the initiatives that we'll be doing is Solana Summer. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about what is Solana Summer from your perspective, and kind of what are the things that the community should be looking forward to?
I got involved in Solana 2021 with that Solana Summer. And so that Solana Summer, it was literally summer. And it was, really just about the flowering of the ecosystem and people, I guess, coming out to play, right? Be merry and have fun, and together build a vibrant ecosystem and have a good time while doing it. So it became a thing in 2021, and I guess it's every year there's Solana Summer, which I'm cool with. It's good, and I think that it's different every time. What's interesting, exciting, and new. And I'm actually curious what Solana Summer means in different parts of the world.
Awesome. I can't share too much right now what we're doing, but later on in the summer, we will give you an answer to that question.
Yeah. I think Taylor Swift kicked off Solana Summer, actually. Did you see that t-shirt that she was wearing?
No, I didn't actually.
Oh, I'll definitely send it to you. She was literally wearing a t-shirt that said Solana Summer on it.
Oh, really?
And I think it's by accident because Solana actually is a beach. There's a beach called Solana Beach in Southern California.
Oh,
And, it's Southern California, so it's pretty beachy, very summery. I think that's also part of the inspiration for Solana Summer because there's always been a little bit of like a surfing and a beach theme for Solana.
Awesome.
So Taylor Swift was wearing this Solana Summer t-shirt, and we all got a
pretty good marketing for the chain. Yes. I was going to say.
Mm-hmm.
So Lily, let's go a little bit into the future,
mm-hmm.
and I would love to hear your thoughts about where, or even prognostications, forecasts, predictions about where are we going, where's Solana going, and more generally, where is crypto going? Mm-hmm. as you probably know, at VALR we have a very big aspiration, not just to have like an exchange that's a business that's trying to make some money, but actually we're trying to promote the best interests of humanity. Let's make things better. Let's make our financial system better. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about where are we, what is this, to what end is all of this? And what are some of your predictions about Solana and the crypto ecosystem over the next, say, 5, 10, or any other time frame that you wish, 10 years?
Yeah, well, I think the original vision of crypto, of blockchain, is the one that Bitcoin very clearly articulated in the white paper, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And I think it's a very simple statement, but it's also a very profound one because it proposes self-custody. And then if you pull on that thread of what self-custody means in an increasingly digital world, it means you have digital property rights. It means that with the introduction of smart contracts, you have programmable money. And what that means now is that anyone with an internet connection can participate in self-custody if there's a reason to, right? That's what we as an industry need to solve. And then what that effectively means that anyone with an internet connection can also have a so-called bank account, right? And that becomes very powerful then because the individual now has enforceable economic sovereignty. And economic sovereignty, I think is pretty fair to say, is a very critical component of being self-sovereign.
Yep.
So to me, I think that that's how peer-to-peer electronic cash system actually relates very profoundly to a worldview that believes the individual is ultimately the responsible for his or her sovereignty. And I think that becomes very significant in crypto because all of those various steps along the way then are the things that we need to build better, faster, more relevant, more product-oriented, more user-oriented. So to me, there's a self-custody part of that, and the part that I think is really important for us as an industry, and I think is definitely critical for Solana in particular, and I think Solana actually is the best place to be doing this, is that programmable money and open financial system part, right? So going back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, why does an open financial system actually matter? Well, most people are subject to terrible economic policy. And what that means is you can work hard your entire life, have one episode of hyperinflation, and that affects your family for generations.
Absolutely.
And I consider that to be fairly anti-human, actually. So I think that the programmable money part of it is the original use case of crypto. It's not the only one, but I think it's not just in and of itself important, but it's also important for all of the other sort of non-explicitly financial decentralized applications to reach their potential as well. If you are going to be building, Web3 games that have some aspect of monetization, then that's just going to work better if you have adjacent on-chain DeFi that helps you monetize that in-game asset that you either wanted or that you just bought, or helps you go buy that in-game asset that you would like to buy. So I think it is first order important. I also think it's third order important for all of the things that are going to be just better. Non-financial apps are going to be better because you have a financial layer. So to me, therefore, the kind of finance vertical as a whole is really critical. Yeah. And I think within that, what I'm the most excited about is actual programmable money, which I actually think is an industry we've kind of forgotten about because no one's been able to do it. And the reason why no one's been able to do programmable money for payments and for commerce, meaning transactions where I'm not sending one token to get another token back, a trade, but I'm sending someone a token for a good or service. And I think the reason why that just doesn't exist, which is the vast majority of the economy, the reason why it doesn't exist is because we haven't had a performant payment rail. And for me, at least when I look around, I think that Solana is the only one that can behave as a payment rail, that has the capacity for it, that has the liquidity of assets, that actually has the independent developer base, and is not subjected itself to, well, I've got to accept a trilemma between those three things. So therefore, I'm really excited about what we can do in terms of really actually getting back to programmable money. And once you layer that on top of the possibility of where there's a bank, where there's an internet connection, there's a bank account, then you basically make finance accessible to literally anyone.
Gotcha.
And I think that's really powerful. Now, I don't think this means that everyone should only do self-custody 100% of the time. I don't think that's the point, right? But I think once you have that, then think about all of the other things that get leveled out when you have an internet, meaning global, meaning borderless, relatively borderless connectivity. So someone sitting in South Africa, for example, now has even greater access to a global labor market. So this is something that, depending on where you sit, it's obviously very contentious. And depending on where you sit on this, some people love it, some people absolutely hate it. It's inherently controversial because inherently what crypto is doing is it is proposing an alternative governance system. And so, I know
that's transnational, and
yes,
in a world
yeah.
that's very national still. Yeah.
So I know a number of people try to, especially in the U.S., oftentimes like to say, oh, well, don't shy away from having a political viewpoint on things. To me, crypto is not political in any. I think it's inherently political. It's not political insofar as any one national framing, but it is literally political in the sense that it is proposing alternative forms of governance over shared resources. And it's the literal definition of being political.
Absolutely. And do you see, so let's just take this to the extreme. Do you see Solana, let's say your views of Solana come true and it actually is the blockchain of the future. Do you see it eating up all kind of other ecosystems and being the one and only? Do you see it coexisting with Bitcoin? What are your views? Like, is this going to overtake Bitcoin, for example, or what are your thoughts there?
I don't have a zero-sum game view of crypto. I think I'm probably one of the least zero-sum game oriented protocol people in crypto. I don't think that the long-term equilibrium outcome is a Google search like 90% share type of outcome. And I think one of the reasons why I don't think we're going to have that is because there's certain barriers to entry that a very successful incumbent like a Google or a Facebook or an Apple can have over and above just the product and the usage network, the fact that they build through great product execution and merit, right? They have outsized resources to go lobby for regulatory protection. That's not something that I think is going to work in crypto, right? Because it is global, it's borderless. And so it to me fundamentally changes how much you can protect a network effect. And it's inherently open and is entirely premised on this idea that checks and balances are not just about the traditional form of checks and balances, but one form of exerting checks and balances is the ability to exit. I think it's a really critical point. That is a dynamic which is very present in crypto. And the reason why exit is easy to do is, first of all, it's literally easy to do, but then also it's actually relatively easy to go spin up a competitor. There's a thing about ETH and ETC back in, I think it was 2016. Yeah. And so the incentive to exit, if things aren't going great here, is relatively easy. So what I think that means is that it's relatively easy to go spin up something that could be really profitable. Maybe a spicy take of mine is that that's effectively what's happening with all the L2s. And to me, like the L2, the whole infrastructure tokens, to me, they're basically just VC meme coins. That's a separate conversation.
Interesting.
But it's very profitable to do so. And then they wrap it around an infrastructure type of narrative, no matter sort of how substantive that narrative is, as a separate matter. Okay. So I think that long term, you're going to have not sort of the oligopoly type of structure, but you're going to have many chains that matter. And I actually find that to be a desirable and equitable world.
Awesome.
But I think there are aspects of that where you will potentially have some network effects around potentially developer mindshare and the number of developer kind of frameworks in developer communities. And so if you kind of stratify the different parts of that, there may be some that have more concentration than others. But as a whole, I don't think Solana and Bitcoin are competitive in any way, shape, or form. I don't even really see Solana being competitive with application-specific or sovereign architectures like a Cosmos, for example. I see them as occupying very different, just because there's some commonality in the underlying mechanism of it being a blockchain does not mean that they're all competitive with one another. It's like saying that everyone that has a website, they're competitive with one another just by virtue of them being a website. Obviously not, right? And so I actually see quite a number of potential alliances within the community, because to me, I see our industry as fundamentally being unified by self-custody first and foremost.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I like what you're saying, that I think, and it sounds to be like a recurring theme throughout your history: exit from medical school, exit from the current financial system. But there's going to be options for people. I think when I look at the ecosystem, I think we've got a flourishing of a whole bunch of different types of, as you said, L2s, different tokens, etc. My long-term view is that we can't have so much fragmentation. A lot of those things are going to go to zero.
Yep.
But there will be some consolidation around a few so that people have choices. So I like that narrative a lot. Yep. We are nearly out of time. I suppose the last very quick question to you is there a question that I should have asked that I didn't ask you that you'd like to say anything about to conclude?
There's so many things we could talk about, Farzam.
There are.
There's so many things like related to Solana, not related to Solana. I'm just glad that we'll call it 15 years on. We're still in touch, and it's like always such a pleasure to have these like long-time friends, and we're still kind of in it together. And I guess share a certain vision as to what we can do to try to benefit humanity, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Lily. I'm really grateful for your time, and most of all, I'm grateful for you. So thank you so much for being a friend for all these years and for your time.
Yes.
Take care.
Totally. All right. Thanks for having me. Bye.